Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to my session. I'm going to be talking about deep dive into GitLab for Drupal developers. So my name is Vladimir, and I'm a software developer by day. I also teach GitLab and Drupal as a part of public classes, as well as I do private classes for the companies as well. I'm also passionate about open source projects you can see here, and GitLab and Drupal obviously one of them. I'm actually located right here in Australia, a city called Brisbane. That's where I'm presenting from, and thanks for the opportunity to actually present it here. We have quite a bit to cover. So today we're going to be talking about GitLab. GitLab is a software product, and it should be familiar to a lot of Drupal developers here, but let's see why is it there actually. So what is it, GitLab? A lot of probably of you familiar with GitLab as being a code management tool or code repository such. So GitLab actually has a number of tiers, and I guess the interesting bit, it comes in a self-hosted option and also a cloud option, which is a gitlab.com, where you can go and try it. So there is an enterprise edition, and there is, as any other cloud service, it comes with, its pricing tiers, so on and so forth, and you can go to the website and check it out. But what we're going to focus today is actually we're going to talk more about the community or open source version, the one you can contribute, and the one is actually free to use, either it be on gitlab.com, or if you decide to install it, on your own machine, on your own CI or your infrastructure, which a lot of companies love to do. The community edition is your edition. So about this talk today, this talk is technical, so I'm gonna go quite a bit in depth, and there's gonna be development talk. So I'm going to talk a lot of concept there, including Git, but it also includes quite a bit of non-technical concepts. So if you're a project manager, if you're someone who actually like to get a bit more technical insight, this talk might be interesting to you, because it not only covers the coding, the operations and development part of things, but also how I run the project, how my company runs the project, and how a lot of projects I've been onto as a part of another company also run. As I mentioned before, we're not covering paid GitLab features. You're free to go and check them out. There's a lot of them. And this talk is actually a discovery session. So I'd like to I wouldn't go really into depth in particular scripts or, composer scripts or Drupal tweaks, but I'm going to give you an ideas how to improve your workflow, improve your setup. So when we're doing a project, for example, building a GitLab module, right? GitLab is now actually part of Drupal.org. So that's the first thing we're going to look at. What does it mean to a developer, especially the ones who've been on Drupal.org for a lot of time and familiar with the concept of patching, but not really sure what it means to actually having GitLab on Drupal.org. We're going to look at the code management on GitLab, and we're going to look at the GitLab automation. In fact, we're going to look at a number of steps that GitLab says they can do for you, or you can configure GitLab to do it for you. So first, let's look at Drupal.org. So here's one of the modules I'm working on called MailChimp Marketing. And what I have now is when you click on the specific issues, right, you'll get the list of issues. So these days, if you want to contribute, or if you want to go and get a patch for a fix, you'll usually find the issue that you're interested in, either through a Google search or through a Drupal search, and drill down to the issue. This is a brand new issue. There was no code, but if you've been to Drupal.org in the last 2 weeks or so, maybe a month now, you can actually see this, which is a create an issue fork, which is something new. Before, for those who doesn't know, the process was developer would come in, download the code, change the code, and then upload patch file and maybe a diff file, which signifies what sort of difference they made to the code. and it would be in Git format. So these days, Git infrastructure improved a lot, and now we can actually do a pull request. That's been a request for many months, maybe years, and finally here. So once we click on it, we can actually create a fork of the code, and then we can create a merge request for it. There are commands actually demonstrating how to do that. So if you would like to contribute to this particular module, you can just go and create a pull request. So update your code to a Git commit, and then to a pull request, and wait for the module moderator or a module approver to come in and merge your changes or give you some feedback on what needs to be changed. And once you click on the commits or a merge request, you would actually see a GitLab interface. So I really encourage everyone who's contributing, who's a developer, to go and check it out. So now it's available as a part of Drupal.org. So Drupal actually grab a copy of GitLab and install it on Drupal.org infrastructure. So this is not really related to any GitLab.com infrastructure. This is a separate copy, and you'll see from URL, it's actually not on GitLab.com. But now let's actually look at what GitLab does. And this was taken maybe 6 months ago. And this is a number of features that GitLab says they are putting into the product since 2011. You can see they split into 10 groups, from manage to defend. And again, I can encourage you to go and see what's there. Some of the features are paid, some of the features are free, but today we're going to concentrate on a few things as a Drupal developers. So we're going to concentrate on planning, creating, verifying, securing, releasing, and configuring your application. So let's start with plan, right? So brand new, if you created a brand new repo, and there is a section called issues. So you can actually see that you have a list of issues, which I clicked on, and it's empty. You have boards. So if you're a software developer or being a software project, you deal with the tools that actually give you boards to manage the project, have tasks in them. You can have labels. There is a service desk option, which is quite interesting. So you can actually run service desk from here if you have a lot of clients, milestones, and iterations. So if you're running agile projects, you can actually set up milestones, set up sprints in here, and track your process. We're not going to go deep, but the creation of the simple task is, again, quite simple. You create a task. There are a number of options. You can see 5 options on the bottom. So you can do an assignee, you can do a wait, due dates, assign labels, and again, milestones, you sprint, and so on and so forth. A very simple interface that give you access quickly to the board. Out of the box, you can get a board that comes with the 2 labels, to do and doing. And you can move your task from one thing to another, giving access to the task to people who are interested in, and updating them on how progress is going. So if you're working with other developers, obviously you would have a conversation with other developers on the task. If you're dealing with your clients, you might set up specific client tasks and advising them on the progress. So this is a bit more complicated project. So this is a real life project of the client that has multi-site, Drupal 7 multi-site running on Acronym. As you can see, the blue labels are the different websites they have and the task assigned to them. There's also a red label, which actually signifies the 2 security updates that were released for Drupal in the last 3 weeks. So, and also you can see the green labels, they actually actual lanes on this particular board. So by moving those tasks around and commenting inside those tasks. You can actually, as I said, manage your project. And this is pretty much all I wanted to cover. Again, I would advise you to go and explore it. But what I found, comparing to another competitors or big tools, these boards are very simple. They contain everything you need to manage a project of significant size. And yeah, you can, have a really good communication tool without actually going away from your Git. These days, Gitlab also introduced GitLab boards, so they're kind of trying to get neck to neck, but sorry, GitHub. But again, this has been there for quite a while, and I really enjoy using GitLab boards. So the next step is creating. Now we start talking about the code. So first of all, there are projects and different companies. So for example, you can see there is my company Tomato Elephant Studio, and there are 2 projects under it. So one is DrupalCon 2020 GitLab, and another one is MailChimp Marketing Drupal, which we already look at. So pretty much you start their stuff. Once you drill down to the project, you can see the different parts of the project. So first, the actual work with the files. So you can commit files, you can look at the commits, you can branch out, tag, look at the tag graph, compare different changes. You can lock the files as well, which is a new feature. So they won't be able to change them. And then we have a standard project stats. We have a ability to fork, star, or get a notification about particular projects. We have management of the branches and navigation around the branches. We have standard Git tools like cloning, downloading the particular repo, information about latest commits, and information about latest changes. Some actually interesting shortcut things, so you can actually add the particular file if you really need to. File navigator and Web IDE. So Web IDE is interesting tool because I use it quite a lot. And when you actually expand Web IDE, you can open Web IDE, or there is a new thing called Gitpod, which you can configure your GitLab to launch a ready-to-code development environment for your project. And this is really becoming popular these days, especially if you're following the news from Acquia. They actually just released the tools for Acquia Cloud, and Acquia is one of the major hosting providers for managed Drupal platform. So they just released the ready-to-code development environment with the services there. So you can actually configure that for your developers and decrease the onboarding process. So the development environment actually in the cloud rather than your machine. Again, I haven't tried it. This is for me the next step to do, but the option is there. Although Web IDE, when I click on Web IDE, it's already quite sophisticated. You can see there is a whole code highlighting. There is a identifying of different types of file in your Git repo, formatting. So this is an example of MD file format, how it fits, and you can go through the code, modify it, and commit through here, actually using the code editor straight out of here. So all you need to have is a browser to actually start contributing the code rather than full-on environment. Now the next step is verify. So what do we mean by verifying actually? So developers come in, they create some piece of functionality or modify the existing piece of functionality. Then as a software development house, we actually want to make sure that we run certain steps through and check if the code is secure, for example, if we did a coding, it's according to coding standards. If actually can use this code, for example, can we use it as a part of the Drupal installation? Can we test it? And then can we deploy it? So here is a simple example of stages and also gentle introduction to GitLab CI and CD process, so continuous integration and continuous deployment process. So the first thing we do, we identify the stages we want to run the code through. And to verify, we're actually going to touch on the second bit, which is linting. Linting means that the code is according to the coding standards. This is how it looks when you actually run a live project. I know it might look busy. It actually does look busy, but this is how those stages actually running on it. So this is a real life Drupal 8 project that's about to go Drupal 9. As you can see here in one stage, on one I clicked, and the stage is linting. You can see there is PHP CS, so PHP code sniffer checking the PHP standards. Then there is lint Drupal config, lint ES, which checks JavaScript standards. And there's also PHP metrics, which is quite a neat PHP library to just give you insights about your PHP code, how complex it is, and you might even find a couple of bugs here and there. So this is the 4 things I decided to run as a part of the lint process. And once we actually look at the different view, so this is what's done with, as you can see on top, this was Drupal core updated from 9.09 to 9.1 recently. We ran 2 separate stages. So first was linting. It actually checked for code changes, and then set up actually making sure that Drupal can be installed. So now to the actual code, and I'm sure quite a few are waiting for it. But before we go there, we'll just concept of continuous integration and continuous delivery is that we're using containers. So not to go far in the containers, I'm sure you can find a lot of instructional material on containers. Here, basically, the first line says what's the name of this particular execution. So PHP CS, PHP code sniffer. So you can name it whatever you want. Now, the second line is the image we're using. Image are usually taken from Docker Hub. And in this particular case, we're taking Composer, latest image for Composer 1.10. So GitLab CI would know and download this image for us. It's going to be, next line is going to be run as part of the lint stage. We will allow failure in this particular case. Then the big red block right here, it's actually how we set up the particular CI. So this is steps to first check the versions and then make sure we actually set up all the rules and downloaded all the dependencies. And the last line right on the bottom, red one, is we're actually executing the PHP code sniffer and using the particular rule set, which it just slightly modified Drupal core rules. So what do we get from that? We get if there are code errors, you'll get output something like that. And you can actually decide if you want to prohibit for developer moving any further until they fix it. You can also do some sort of automated fix. There is another tool that actually can fix most of those issues, not all of them, but most of them, and commit this code as a part of the CI. Or you can just, like in this example, allow the failure and move on. So why would you allow the failure? In some projects I was working on, you just get a big code base with a lot of ugly code. And it's not my personal opinion, it's what actually code sniffer would say. There would be 8,000, 9,000 line of code. So here's an example of one of those projects. So this is a Drupal 7 multi-site. And as you can see here, there is 8,900 plus lines of errors in this particular section. So this is where you would allow the failure and actually, go either fix it, or you would deem, it's too expensive to fix it. The code is working. They might be migrating from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 very soon. So the client would be wise to use the budget differently rather than fixing, 8,000 errors. Now, just a bit of a warning, if you are fixing the errors automatically, make sure you run some sort of testing after that, because the code tends to break, and automated tools are only that good. So yeah, if you're running something automated, please make sure you double check what you just modified and recommitted it. So there are other ways to check your code, and as I mentioned before, there are a few things here. So for example, this highlighted code is the code that downloads the container that has Node.js inside it. And then, as you can see, it runs npm run ESLint. It's a script inside the package.json. And in this particular case, all it does, it goes and checks standards for custom modules on this particular Drupal installation and gives you this. So it's the same thing, only checking different language. And on the bottom, you can see there is an execution of the custom script in this particular way. Again, I'm also using Node container. You can see there is Slim, so I'm using the Linux Slim. I'm using Node.js 13 with a Linux Slim, and I'm just running specific bash code. Again, you can use different container like Ubuntu or something like that. But the idea for this one link is that we had a few rules. For example, blocks in Drupal should be named only start with the name of the active theme. And that's what this, and there's other coding standards we actually agreed on before we started the project. So this code would go and actually show the new developers what they did wrong. For example, if they came in first time on the project, skip through the naming convention section, you don't have to go and do anything, because the next time they commit this block configuration, which doesn't start with the active theme, let's say aloe vera or Clara, they would just go and their code won't go past linking stages. It will just sit there and say, no, can't do that. Please go and modify your block, because the block naming convention is something like that. So you can see there is a good way in your verification staging to, first of all, to make sure your code is up to standard and it's working, and also make sure that, you know, newcomers and new developers also quickly understand the what sort of rules are there in the code. So we're obviously following Drupal coding standards, but there also may be something like what I just showed you. So the next stage is security. It's not a very big one, but as you can see, the first one here, first item on this list in stages called health. And that's what I did. I just created this script, which, if you can see on the bottom, it says schedules. So GitLab actually allows you to schedule the scheduled CI execution. So in this particular case, you can actually go and say, hey, run this on a daily basis at 5 a.m. in the morning. And all it does, so it downloads the container using latest Ubuntu Linux. It presets it, and then it runs the command actually going into Acquia production environment and checking for security updates at 5 a.m. in the morning. So when I wake up at 7, I already have a report saying there was some security vulnerabilities released overnight, because that's when usually in Australia, that's when we usually get in them about 3 a.m. in the morning. It's a good thing if actually I saw the notification from the security team and they said, hey, the releases are coming, but if I haven't, I would have a report first thing in the morning. So this is very important. Again, I only prefer managed Drupal hosting, so I don't have to care about operating system, I don't have to care about PHP version, Apache version, MySQL version. But if you're running, you know, on AWS, Google Cloud, DigitalOcean, or any other not managed Drupal hosting providers, you can actually go and set up an extra CI reports for your security. So if there is a PHP security version or Ubuntu security version, you're actually on top of it, and yeah, get a report. Now to the release, which is quite an interesting part for me. Again, this is what I'm doing. There are many other ways of doing things like that to release your Drupal platform, but I'm just going to take 2 existing managed hosting service providers, which is a Platform SH and Acquia. And so when we actually look at Platform SH and Acquia, they both platforms that are using Git. So it means that the code, they store the code of your Drupal website as a Git repository. So it doesn't matter if you have a Gitlab repository set up, they would also have their own repo. There are ways to sync them, but in reality, they also run their own Git. So this is something they have in common. Now, if you use Platform SH before, you know it supports Composer deployment. Composer is a PHP dependency management tool, and this is what Drupal is based on. So when you actually give composer.json to Platform SH, they would know what to do with it. They would know how to get the dependencies, and they would know where to put them based on the composer.json. Whereas in Acquia, most of the environments, and especially production environment, they won't have that knowledge. So whatever code you supply to Acquia would be the one will end up on an environment stage of production. Now, they just a bit of a side note, they do support Composer dependencies on a live dev, which is like switching Git and then running Composer install so it can get all your dependencies. But you cannot do that in production. So it means you actually have to commit all your vendor folder, Drupal/core folder, Drupal contrib module, and all of that before it hits the production. Now, in Acquia, what I would usually do is I set up the CI command. After it was deployed to dev, the CI command would go and basically do what it just explained. It would go do a composer install, remove all the Git folders, commit everything, and just push it further away, which is, in my particular case, would be dev Acquia release. So dev Acquia would already receive the code, including vendor folder, contrib modules, core, and I don't have to do anything. So GitLab CI would do that all for me. And then when I merge this dev-acquia to stage and to production, both of those environments would already have that, and I already tested it on the dev environment. Now, here the scripts are actually cut down, but the idea is, as I said before, there are 4 lines of code. First one is check out the code. Second one replaces the git ignore file, just to make sure that, because usually vendor and Drupal core are actually in git ignore files. And then it would remove .git folder, so make sure that actually all the code goes into repo rather than just some references. And then it commits it to the branch I want. So this is all in this highlight code. And if you need that actual example how to do it for Acquia, just pin me and I'll share it on GitLab. Now with Platform SH, it's much easier. Apart from the setup and some additional changes, the only line you can see is actually here. I'm pushing to GitLab. The highlighted line I'm pushing to GitLab, but line above that, it's I'm just pushing to Platform SH with storing it as a variable so I can do some processing later on. But the idea is with Platform SH, it's just one line, and Platform SH would do composer install. It put everything where it belongs to during the scaffolding stage. So different stages. There is also another one that I did for Pantheon, which is another in top 3 managed Drupal hosting services. But yeah, you'll get the idea. If you work with Pantheon, you know they have different tools again to work with environments and different ways to scaffold Drupal. And it's changing again with Drupal 9. So the good thing about the GitLab now for your release process, you can go and plug and unplug it. If your client decides to switch from one hosting to another, you already have preset key. And you can see there are a number of variables here, which we'll cover very soon. For example, here I have secret storage, as they call them in many cases. It doesn't have to be GitLab, but GitLab actually have a secret storage. Same as Acquia, same as Platform SH. You can actually store your secrets inside there. And here you can see there is a remote host, there is a public and private keys that are used for verification, actually to push to Git environments. You can, with some of the Git services, you can use the deployment key or API key. And you can store many other things here. So again, all part of the release process. And I use those variables in a before script section of the CI, which is a section where it allows you to set the particular environment to be able to push. So in this particular case, quickly, it just connects the two different Gits, which one sits on GitLab, one sits on your deployment. In this particular case, platform SH, and it makes sure that it can verify both GitLab and platform SH, adds them to known hosts, process the private and public key, sets up my Git credentials, and pushes stuff up. So pretty simple, pretty standard stuff. But yeah, as you can see, I didn't share any secrets in here because I'm using this secret repository as part of release process. Now, the next stage I'm going to cover is how to configure your Drupal setup. So let's say you push the code to the staging or production environment, and maybe there are some differences you want to cover. So again, you might use, for example, you don't want to enable your Google Analytics on dev, and maybe not even on stage. You only want to enable your Google Analytics on prod. So you can actually store the key here and then configure the environment. Like I want to break down this particular script, and this is a composer script. Again, it will be executed by CI, but this is a composer script of one of the production environments. So when I release to production, I would say drush prod mode on, composer drush prod mode on, and it would do fields. In this particular case, you can see if someone just went and enabled views UI and fields UI and dblog, it would just go and uninstall them. Some of you might say it can be also done via the config. Yes, I agree with that. Just for this particular project, it was kind of necessary thing. And then I also would go and second line using drush enable modules like syslog and role delegation. Then there would be a bunch of system performance configurations, for example, gzip, so minify CSS, but don't minify JS. There was a bug there that actually had to do that. And the last 5 lines, you can see I'm actually setting up 2 services. One is Google Maps. So I'm using Google Maps API key to enable Google Maps. And the second line, I'm actually configuring the Cloudflare module. Again, can be done many different ways, but this is one of the ways to do it. And then I just clear cache. So this is done as a part of the release to the production on Acquia. So talking more about the whole workflow, I just covered bits and pieces from different projects, but I just wanted to show you how to use GitLab from a Drupal perspective. I've been doing that for more than 3 or 4 years. Just purely on GitLab. And I found there is much, much more to learn. So if you want to go and check out all the 10 stages of the DevOps cycle, feel free to go and explore it. There is a lot of tools I want to see. For example, the next 2 things I want to explore is, as I mentioned, one of them before, it's the developer environment. So when I'm on board in the new developer, I don't have to go and set up their machine. It's all set up by GitLab straight in the cloud, and just have this ability to actually use CI and also IDE in the cloud. It's quite amazing. And it seems like it's going to be the next step where developer's machine actually sitting in the cloud, and you be able to, instead of mucking around for many days with your machine, which I didn't say wasn't fun, but sometimes it's just too expensive, to actually being able to get and spin off the environment for Drupal with database already installed, with IDE in the cloud, and also using the services, for example, Elasticsearch or Solr or something else already up and running. I think that would be something very interesting. That's definitely what I'm going to be investigating. The second thing that I'm currently investigating, and probably will expand this talk in the future, is monitoring. So GitLab actually now allows you to create a monitoring dashboard for all sorts of the statistic, be it security releases, some New Relic statistics, or or Cloudflare statistics, that you can actually push it all back into GitLab, and they would provide you a dashboard. So if you're running, a mini hosting company, or just purely want to use some statistics for your development and operations, you can do that with GitLab already. They do require integration with Elasticsearch, but apart from that, yeah, this integration is already there, and this is something I'm really looking for. So those two things I'm really looking forward to explore in the next 6 months, and maybe present them sometimes in the future. Now, if we have any questions, I'll just switch to the console, and feel free to start typing in there. I will be reading the question. Okay, so the first question is it advisable to execute database updates during the pipeline execution? I do it as a part of the configure update, and honestly, it didn't fail me a lot of times. So what I usually do, just following the standard Drupal procedure, just put the website in maintenance mode, run updates, and then take website out of maintenance mode. Maybe also run those commands that I showed that set up particular keys for your environment, be it Cloudflare, Google Maps, Google Analytics, and so on and so forth. Next question, about the name of block prefixes with the theme name. If you want to scan this code in standard with the code sniffer C. Yep, well, thanks for this link. I'll actually copy it and put it. As I mentioned before, there is, it's not, I'm just showing you the way that I tend to work, and I'm always happy when people actually show me the better alternative way to do it. Because like with anything, once you start working with a GitLab or any other CI/CD environment, it's, it's ongoing process. You're always looking for the ways to improve things, decrease the time it goes live, decrease the amount of failures you can have, and all of that. But it's all your work to go there. So thanks for sharing this link. I'll wait for a bit more. If you have any questions, feel free to type it. Okay, how to integrate Acquia BLT with GitLab? Good question. I unfortunately, I haven't worked with Acquia BLT. One of my colleagues did though, so I can ping them and see if they have any advice on that. But it probably would be, if it's not GitLab, it would be some sort of different CI, but yeah, so I don't have any expertise in the Acquia BLT area, unfortunately. So let's have another minute. I'm not sure which way it goes. So BLT was the first one, execution. Okay, where can we find all the examples that you showed in the presentation of your slides? So that's an interesting one. I thought about putting everything together, but in the end, it was, just picking and choosing from different sort of projects. If you have any particular example you want to see, I will be putting some GitLab example together. Maybe I'll just put all the examples there. But at the moment, yeah, there is no repo. I start working on a repo, and you can find it publicly on GitLab. But at the moment, it only includes one script, which is actually comparing execution of Drupal 9.1, execution of installation of Drupal 9.1, installation of Drupal 9.0, just to see the speed difference. But yeah, I think once I upgrade this talk, I would put more examples. I just really want to make sure that, they're clear and they're actually usable. Yep. How to handle multiple environments, deployments, and the setup of the database dump. So what I do for Acquia environment, I usually manually copy the database from production to stage and dev, and then trigger the deployment. But another way to do it is actually, because Acquia and Platform SH, they both have API. So you can actually use API to copy the database. The problem is you never know how long the copying of the database is going to take. I have one client that takes 3 seconds, another one that has up to 3 minutes because of the size of the database. So another way I'm exploring at the moment is actually manually executed CI pipelines. So it basically says, okay, trigger the CI pipeline by copying the database on Acquia, and then the next one I have to go and trigger it. So there is no clear way at the moment to see or ping Acquia or Platform SH, say, hey, did backup finish? There might be, I just didn't find one that's very reliable and very good for CI. So as I said, at the moment, just because I'm used to it, I'll just copy the database from production to stage and dev when I can. But I also have a script that uses Acquia API to actually copy database to both environments, and then pauses everything else until I manually click start. Is there a way to export the configured GitLab CI variables from one project to another? No, I didn't find one. And I also tried different ways to like store all the variables in Acquia environment, store all the variables in Platform SH environment, or actually store in GitLab. And I found that GitLab is kind of more concise way to do it. I'm not sure if it's the best approach from security perspective, although you probably need to make sure you give the right permissions to people who can see those variables, especially the very, very important one. But again, there are quite a few good presentations from previous DrupalCons and other Drupal conferences how to manage your secrets. If you Google, can you keep a secret, Drupal, it's quite a good presentation to do that, and they explain other ways to how to keep your secret variables and handle them. In order to manage different configuration per environment, do you recommend using your composer script or something like config split? Personally, I'm not a big fan of config split, but again, this is just a personal opinion. I'm more used to just working with one config and then setting up the variable. But I've seen quite a few successful, very, very large projects that use config split. And again, I didn't see anything that would convince me it's the worst way to do it. Actually, in some cases, it's much better way. For all the projects I've been working on, I didn't need to that extent to go to a config split. There's not many things to set up, but I would assume if your dev and stage and prod are really, really different, then yeah, you would actually need to use config split. I've seen the good examples of using it. So yeah, it's another way to do it, like many other things with Drupal. We're almost out of time. We have 2 minutes left. So if there is one more questions, I'll take it. Otherwise, you can find me as Vladimir AUS pretty much everywhere. There's also a couple of things that DrupalCon want me to show. So first, join for contribution sprints. They're running on Friday, December 11th European time. I definitely will be there and recommend if you have any module you want to support or contribute to the core, feel free to join. All the information on the website, and search for hashtag Drupal contributions. And also, yeah, please rate this session and let me know what you think. How can I improve it? I already can see ways to improve it, but as I said, it's an ongoing process. I'll just check for one last time. So thanks everyone for coming in. I hope you enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll see you somewhere around the conference. Thanks.